in for the New Orleans Saints. Plenty to get to, but Bob, how was the new year? You said that the little one stayed up the whole time, so he almost beat us out because I know you and I were probably sitting there with clothespins in our eyes like this, trying to make sure we were awake.
Brendan, you might have been. I wasn't. Evil doesn't sleep. I had no problem staying awake for the new year. My bigger issue was going to sleep and staying asleep afterward. I think I finally got officially to bed around 1:30, and then I woke up at 2:17 and was in and out of sleep after that until I got up for good at 7. So it is what it is. We had a nice New Year's though. We went to a family member's wedding, intimate little reception, terrific food, terrific get together. But we were home by 6, I think, 6 or 6:30, and just chilled out the rest of the evening. So it was nice. I hope you and Katie had a nice New Year too.
Yeah, we did something a little similar. We went and saw some of her family. They have like 3 family members that were all December 31st or January 1st babies. So it's just a big little get together. Happy New Year, happy birthday. And then we were home by like 8. So, nothing crazy. I know we appear young, but we are old in the soul. We don't stay out and do anything crazy. Especially living near a big city, you just don't want to. You want to be safe and all that good stuff. So hopefully you guys all had a safe and happy New Year's celebration. Want to be the first of the Saints media to wish you guys a happy New Year. And new year, new me, but same me though. I don't know. We'll see how the Saints are. Is it a new year, new Saints team, or are they going to be the same old Saints? They have a big test today, Bob, against the NFC leading Philadelphia Eagles. It sounds like the Saints are going to have some key pieces returning to health and being on the field today, which is a big boost, while the Eagles will be without Jalen Hurts, an MVP candidate for yet another week. But Minshew Mania, we'll see if it's Minshew Mania 2.0, as he had a great outing last week. And obviously there's a lot riding on the line for the Eagles today too. If with a win, they clinch the NFC East, they clinch the number 1 seed in the NFC. And in that whole process, it actually helps them out with their draft pick in the first round because they own the Saints' first round pick. So they could have 3 things crossed off the checklist today: winning the division, winning the conference, and ultimately improving their draft stock all at the same time. Bob, what's so scary about this Eagles team, even without Jalen Hurts, who I said is potentially a front runner for the MVP?
What's so scary about him, Brendan? Everything. They have they have a very physical offensive line, although that offensive line will be missing Pro Bowl right tackle Lane Johnson today. That's the spot where Cameron Jordan usually lines up. So maybe we get a big game from big old 94. Without Hurts, Hurts can beat defenses in so many ways. We've seen that as media members of the New Orleans Saints for the last 2 years. But Minshew is got to be one of the better backup quarterbacks in the NFL. He can't threaten you with his legs like Jalen Hurts can, but he throws a very nice deep ball. He reads defenses pretty well, and he's mobile enough to move around in the pocket and buy himself another extra second or two while he goes through his reads. Miles Sanders has got to be one of the more underrated backs in the NFL. I have loved Miles since his days at Penn State, and they have 2 1,000-yard receivers in explosive game breaker Devonta Smith, and physical wideout AJ Brown, along with a great slot guy in Quez Watkins. And if he's not a top 3 tight end, he's definitely a top 5 tight end in Dallas Goedert. So they have weapons everywhere on offense. It's similar on defense. They have probably the deepest defensive line in the NFL, definitely the deepest defensive tackle core, and they'll just assault offensive backfields, whether it's stuffing the run game or just pressuring the passer. I mean, they have 60 or 61 sacks this year. That not only leads the NFL, that leads the NFL by a double-digit margin. They have a couple of underrated athletic linebackers, and T.J. Edwards and Kaiser White. I don't consider Hassan Reddick a linebacker. I know he's listed as that, but he's just an extension of the defensive line. And they have 2 Pro Bowl cornerbacks in Darius Slay and James Bradbury. So there aren't a lot of weaknesses on this team. I know a lot of believers, national media or fan wise, aren't necessarily buying into the Philadelphia Eagles hype. Guys, I am. This is a legitimate Super Bowl contender. I'm not saying they're unbeatable, not saying they're unstoppable, but I can understand why they have rolled through the NFL this year.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And the thing with the Eagles over the years as well, the fan base is terrific. They've always been terrific, whether you like the Philly aggressive fans or not. They're some of the most loyal in any sport um, across the country, and it's a tough place to play in.
Yeah.
Lincoln Financial Field is. It's going to be a big test for New Orleans today. Sticking with their defense, I do want to throw this out there. Wasn't able to sneak it in my fantasy piece this week. So this is some extra content for you guys that read and need some help this week. I'm going to say beware of Alvin Kamara this week. And we've talked about this a couple times on the podcast, Bob, and the pregame shows with fantasy and Alvin Kamara. And it's been a weird year. And obviously you had him on your team as well. But
Thanks, Alvin.
He's facing an Eagles. Hey, we talked about this last week, Bob. It's not all Alvin. It's equally Carmichael and equally everybody else for play calling. But with that being said, the Eagles haven't allowed a 19-plus point running back performance since week 2. That's how stout that interior of the defensive line is. And even with Alvin and his pass-catching ability that's been so talked about, in his time in the NFL, we've definitely seen a dip this year. I would start Alvin if you have him because you almost have to, right?
Mm-hmm.
Spend a first or second round pick on him. If you're playing this week, you're likely in a championship game and you want to ride or die with that first or second round pick. But I would be weary if you have a better matchup to maybe wiggle that better matchup in as your running back 1, running back 2. If you got to use Alvin as a flex, so be it. But it's going to be tough sledding for Alvin Kamara and the New Orleans Saints offense today. With that being said, Bob, talking about the Saints offense, fantasy's been really hard for the Saints offense this year because there hasn't been a whole lot of production outside of one guy. And that one guy looks like he's returning to the lineup today. What's the latest on Chris Olave?
Chris Olave is dealing with a hamstring injury that had him limited in practice all week, and caused him to miss last week's game against the Cleveland Browns. Folks, if you follow Brandon and I, then you would have known last week that we didn't think Olave was going to play from midweek on. You don't mess around with a hamstring or a soft tissue injury when you're going up into the cold like that. So the fact that Chris did not play last week certainly didn't surprise me, and shouldn't have surprised many of you. We're hearing that he is going to be a go today. Not only him, but a huge Pro Bowler on the other side of the ball for the New Orleans Saints as well. And we'll get into that in a minute. Having Olave back is huge. I know Rashid Shaheed has been playing very good football. Juwan Johnson has emerged as a terrific tight end. But Chris Olave is your main threat in the passing game. And the Saints are going against the #1 ranked Eagles pass defense with a Pro Bowler in Darius Slay at one cornerback and a former Pro Bowler in James Bradbury at the other. You got to think all hands on deck. I'm interested to see if Olave will be limited, and if he will be, we'll see that very early on. But the early report, and this came out of Ian Rappaport overnight first. One of the reasons why I woke up at 2:17 a.m. because I got that alert. That Olave is going to suit up today. But the snap count, we'll have to wait and see how that hamstring responds. The good news is it's not real cold in Philadelphia. It's low 50s, high 40s, rather humid day, actually, with some moisture probably in the way of rainfall expected.
Note that the Saints also had 2 practice squad elevations this week as well. Josh Andrews for the offensive line and Keith Kirkwood, my favorite brother from Neptune, or cousin from Neptune, whatever you want to say. Neptune Township, New Jersey guy. He got elevated again this week. The Saints receiving corps, the last 2 years, it has not been a pretty conversation whatsoever, but a bright spot for Chris Olave returning to the lineup. Not so much of a bright spot for his college last night, but
That was a tough one.
Yeah, two terrific playoff games though.
Yeah.
The Michigan TCU game was just as tight, just as dramatic. So I guess the committee finally got it right for a year, at least for now. We'll see. We'll see how the championship goes. But back to Saints Eagles. The Saints defense last week against Cleveland, we understood that the game plan for both teams was going to be running the football.
Mm-hmm.
Interestingly enough, even without Jalen Hurts this week, you would have to imagine a lot of the game plan for Philadelphia is to run the football.
Mm-hmm.
So what can the Saints take from last week to apply to this week against a Eagles team that is a little bit deeper than just Miles Sanders and Jalen Hurts? Remember, Kenneth Gainwell is a terrific back, and some of you Saints fans are going to remember Boston Scott from Louisiana Tech, who was also a member of the New Orleans Saints for a little bit. How can the Eagles use that three-headed monster against the Saints, and what can the Saints learn from their experiences in Cleveland and take them into Philly?
I'll first start with the latter part. The Saints beat Cleveland last week in large part because they won the line of scrimmage on both sides of the football. They have to go into that, this Philadelphia showdown with that same kind of mentality and with that same kind of goal. And that's where they got the Saints got whipped at the line of scrimmage against the Eagles each of the last 2 years, especially on the defensive side. Now, we've seen the Saints struggle against the run a lot, for the most part, all of this year. But that was not the case from 2018 through 2021. They had a dominant run defense, but a dominant run defense that was absolutely steamrolled by the Eagles. In each of the last two meetings between these teams, Philadelphia has rushed for over 240 yards. That's mind-boggling. It certainly was then. Now, Hurts played a big role in that. He had one 100-yard game and then another, I think, about 70 yards rushing with 3 scores. So taking him out of the equation does strip the Eagles of a very dangerous dimension. But like you said, Miles Sanders is a very capable back. He's rushed for had two straight 100-yard outings against the Saints when these teams have met. So the Eagles are going to try to establish Miles Sanders right off the bat. Now, Sanders is dealing with a little bit of a knee injury. It shouldn't limit him, but if it does, like you said, Kenneth Gainwell, Boston Scott are both capable backs. They both had 100-yard outings in their careers. It's just that Miles Sanders has carried the load this year. For New Orleans to beat that, they have to get immediate interior pressure because Sanders, Gainwell, Boston Scott, they're all cutback runners. They like to hit the edge, but if you leave them an inside crease, they'll hit it. They'll hit it in the wink of an eye and get to the second level of your defense, quicker than you could say loss. So New Orleans needs to get interior pressure. Onyemata and Shai Tuttle in particular have been playing much better of late. They're going to have to keep that trend going because shutting down the Eagles' inside rushing lanes will clog those cutback lanes. If you get penetration, that'll cause Sanders, Scott, Gainwell a little bit of hesitation and force them to bounce their play all the way outside instead of bam, hitting it right off tackle. And by that extra precious second will give the time for Demario Davis and Caden Ellis to close on the ball carrier and minimize gains to the outside and perhaps even come up with some big plays for losses.
Another guy on that Saints defense that I particularly highlighted from last week and even called him my X factor for this week was Tyrann Mathieu, who I thought had perhaps his best game as a Saint last week. Now, this week, I fully expect him to be involved in the run-stopping defense and playing in the box yet again. However, you highlighted Dallas Goedert earlier, and I could see Tyrann Mathieu being his assignment for the day. And also, you can't knock Miles Sanders as a pass-catching back. No. Certainly not Gainwell and Boston Scott, who I think are more of your traditional scat third-down running backs on this team. What does Tyrann Mathieu's assignment look like today, and what do you expect out of him? Is he going to have another great performance for the Black and Gold?
Man, I'm very interested to see what the Saints defense does with Tyrann Mathieu because remember, Marcus May is going to miss today's game again. Justin Evans is going to declared out also, both of them dealing with shoulder injuries. Now, PJ Williams is back. So There, right there, I would expect some, some mixing up between, Tyrann Mathieu and PJ Williams as far as who's going to play in the box. But you have to have one of those guys in deep support, at least one of them, because Devonta Smith will burn. I love the Saints cornerbacks. They're maybe the best unit. They are the best unit on the team, maybe among the best of any unit in the entire National Football League. But you're going to have deep support. Dallas Goedert, you need to have a quality coverage option on him, whether it's PJ, Tyrann, or one of your cornerbacks. If the Saints defensive line, along with Caden Ellis and Demario Davis, can win the line of scrimmage without the addition of an extra guy in the box, because that extra guy would be PJ or Mathieu. If they can win those assignments, and at least contain the Eagles' rushing attack without the Saints bringing an extra guy up in the box, that's going to have a tremendous effect on the entire defense, because it's going to allow you that extra guy back in coverage, to take an option away from Gardner Minshew, when he does drop back to pass, and also help the play action defense. When you have to bring an extra guy down in the box, that extra guy, once he recognizes that it's not a run play, will then drop back into at least a short or a matchup zone coverage. If you're winning those assignments and you don't even have to bring a guy up, that means that you don't have to worry nearly as much about a play action fake, because your guys up front are winning their battles. So I do expect them to mix and match what they do with PJ and Tyrann Mathieu. How often they're in the box depends on how well the Saints front seven does against the Eagles offensive line and running game.
Well, the injury report just dropped, Bob, the official injury report. So let's look at it. This from our very own John Hendricks with the Saints News Network. These are the inactives for New Orleans in Week 17. We already talked about Marcus May. Andrus Peat will be out. Tenyo Passanio will be out. Chase Hansen will be out. Justin Evans will be out. Dwayne Washington is out. And then a healthy scratch of Marquez Callaway, which surprises me a little bit with how thin that receiving corps is. So you're looking at Olave, Shaheed, Traquan Smith, Keith Kirkwood being your guys in terms of the receiving corps. I guess you can throw the Troutmans and the Juwan Johnsons of the world in that conversation as well, particularly more so Juwan Johnson, who's had a terrific season. Looking at that injury report, Bob, is there anything that concerns you? I think the one that jumps off to me, and yes, PJ Williams is healthy, but not having Justin Evans in a game like this is a little concerning. And the one name that is not on that injury report that Saints fans may be excited about, Marshawn Lattimore, finally making his return to the lineup.
And that's what sticks out about today's inactive and injury report the most, the name that's not on it, Marshawn Lattimore. We knew he was getting closer and closer to playing, just by his practice participation being less limited over the last 3 weeks. Just like with Olave on offense, although the fact that Callaway is inactive is probably a good sign for Olave's health and snap count. But I'm interested to see how much action Lattimore actually gets. First of all, Alontae Taylor has played extremely well in his absence. Paulson Adebo has come on pretty well after a very slow start to the year. And Bradley Roby has been strong in the slot or even outside when he's asked to slide out there. Lattimore's been absent for 10 weeks now. In the last 8 weeks, the Saints have not given up a 100-yard receiver, and only one player has as many as 70 yards receiving against them. So I'm not going to say Marshawn Lattimore is not needed, but I am highly impressed at how well the Saints defensive backs, especially the cornerbacks, have played in his absence. With that being said, you're going up against a Pro Bowler in A.J. Brown, a should-be Pro Bowler in Devonta Smith, and a really underrated slot guy in Quez Watkins. Lattimore is needed today. His ability to shut down an opposing wideout, usually a top wideout, one-on-one, allows you to be more aggressive and creative with what you do with your safeties. And we just talked about, wondered out loud, what are they going to do with PJ? What are they going to do with Mathieu? You have Alontae Smith who's playing, you have Alontae Taylor who's been playing extremely well. Marshawn Lattimore, if he's healthy, we know what he's capable of. And Adebo, Roby, they're both quality starters as well. If you have all four guys, those guys playing at a high level, you could be a lot more aggressive and creative with what you do in your front seven, how you rush Gardner Minshew, how you play the run, and the safety help over the top. So I'm excited to have Marshawn Lattimore back in the lineup. I am interested to see how he will be used early in this game, though.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. You mentioned that the Eagles have two 1,000-yard receivers. Smith is your speedster, and then you got AJ Brown, who I'm still shocked Tennessee let him go for what they got back. But I would assume, in terms of just that physical style of play, Brown's going to attract Lattimore's attention a little bit more than Smith will. But with a player of Brown's caliber and Marshawn returning to health, what's that snap count look like? What's that going to look like? Because you could very easily line up Alontae Taylor or Paulson Adebo
Right.
On that matchup, because they're both bigger physical corners as well. It looks like the Saints have really found a mold for what they want their DBs to look like. That'll be the interesting thing to me, because, obviously we've seen Lattimore throughout his career just bully some of the bigger, more physical and better receivers in the league, whether you're talking about obviously the Mike Evans of the world, the Julio Joneses of the world, for the bit that Julio was in the NFC South. I guess still is in the NFC South, but just not as effective as he once was in Atlanta. And nonetheless, the list goes on and on. That's the type of matchups that Lattimore has thrived in, but coming back for the first time in 10 weeks, do you really want him in that kind of grueling physical matchup for 4 quarters? Or is it going to be more of a tag team effort where Lattimore gets some, and then you put a guy like Adebo or Taylor over there as well? You talked about some of the things that Gardner Minshew does well in a game like this. And honestly, before we even jump into that, if the Jags didn't have the number 1 overall selection and grab Trevor Lawrence, I still think Minshew would be in Jacksonville. This is a personal opinion. Maybe not the long-term starter, but I think he would have made a good bridge quarterback. But you can't bridge a number 1 overall pick nowadays. If it had been a later pick or whatnot, I think Minshew would have had some years to be a bridge quarterback and done whatever. But he is one of the better backups in the league. Showed what he could do last week. In a game like this, when you do have all 4 of those DBs healthy, 4 quality DBs, do you have a little bit more confidence to allow the guys of Peyton Turner, Marcus Davenport, Cameron Jordan? Do you have more confidence for them to pin their ears back and go after a guy like this? And how do you make them uncomfortable early, especially with such a great ground game?
I guarantee you, Cam Jordan, Carl Granderson, who's played exceptional football, Marcus Davenport, all those edge rushers, I guarantee you they've been walking around with smiles on their faces the last few days. No disrespect to Gardner Minshew, but you can play so much differently again, or you have to play so much differently against a guy like Jalen Hurts. Be so much more disciplined, perhaps delayed, in your pass rush. Where a guy like Minshew, more of a traditional pocket passer, you can pin your ears back a little bit. And that's what I expect from the Saints today, especially over on that right side without Lane Johnson being there. Philadelphia still has a very formidable front line, offensive line, but missing a Pro Bowl right tackle is going to affect any blocking scheme. So how are the Saints going to attack over there? Are they going to try to bring delayed blitzes like they've been so effective with Demario Davis and Caden Ellis recently to try to get in Minshew's face? Again, Minshew, he's not a statue back there. He's not a Peyton Manning. He's not a Tom Brady. He can move. He can get outside of the pocket and maybe even make some plays with his legs. But you can play a Gardner Minshew a little bit more traditionally in your pass rush than you can a Jalen Hurts. So we've known that Dennis Allen defenses have traditionally struggled with mobile quarterbacks, with running quarterbacks. So with that off the table today, I like the Saints' defensive matchup against a lot of these guys. It's a challenge. Miles Sanders, Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert, A.J. Brown, they're all playmakers. And Gardner Minshew can be that quarterback to make the plays and give them chances to make plays. So, the Saints can't come into this overconfident, but I like the matchup a lot better with Jalen Hurts on the sideline.
Yeah, let's not forget Jalen Hurts' first NFL start against the Saints a few years ago. I mean, the guy put himself on the map then and has certainly grown into being the face of the franchise for Philadelphia. I think they finally got their guy, which is, I guess, good for them. Let's take one fan question before we get out of here, Bob. With how the year's gone for the Saints, will this game, win or lose, tell us anything we already know or don't know about New Orleans? I'm going to go back personally and talk about what we talked about a little bit last week. Regardless of the results and the fact that we're talking about a 6-9 team that's averaging like under 20 points a game offensively, the fact that we're even talking about playoffs with them is a little beyond me.
Mm-hmm.
It just proves how bad, again, we don't have to stress this to anybody. It's not that the Saints are already good. It's the whole NFC South is just bad. I'm just looking for heart. We talked last week about guys who are playing for contracts, playing for money. Bob made some excellent points about guys who could be cap casualties or be traded in the offseason. I'm looking for guys that it's easy to say, I want to be here or I want to be a member of the New Orleans Saints going forward and this and that, but you have to show it.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking for these guys that are active today, that are battling for those spots, battling for those contracts to prove that they deserve to be in New Orleans next year or not considered. If you outplay any expectation, you can't even be considered to be traded. And that even goes for some of these veteran guys we've talked about with high cap numbers. Prove to me you're a leader, on the field. Prove to me that you're still worth what we're paying you.
Mm-hmm.
And for those young guys, prove that you deserve to be on this roster moving forward and be a key corner piece of what we want to build. That's what I want to see out of the Saints today. That's what I want to see out of the Saints in their final regular season game next Sunday. Those are the things I'm looking for. I don't think we learn anything about the team as a whole, but I think we learn a lot about the individual pieces that will be on this team or not be with this team moving forward.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. But not only individually, we can still learn something about this team as a whole. They're obviously not Super Bowl contenders, not as this New Orleans team stands now. But they showed some character. They showed a lot of character last week, going into those conditions and not only beating the Cleveland Browns, but having to come from behind to do it. A game on the road in Philadelphia against a Super Bowl favorite, while your own playoff lives, if you're the New Orleans Saints, are still legitimately on the line. They still have a legitimate shot, but they got to win out. Other things have to happen too. Yeah, that's out of their control. They have to win out to have any chance at all. So how bad does this team want this? Maybe they realize that they're not a Super Bowl contender themselves if they're being realistic. Maybe they don't. Athletes, and I'm speaking as one myself, athletes are a bit stubborn when it comes to accepting the truth. But nonetheless, you're still fighting for your playoff lives. Your fate is in your control as far as whether you win or lose. So how much character does this team have? How much do they want Dennis Allen back? Now, a lot of us feel that Dennis Allen is going to be back as the head coach. There are still some that feel that he won't be. I think he will. But if this team embarrasses themselves in their last two games, then we're talking a different story. The players aren't dumb. They know that in part, Dennis Allen's future, immediate future, lies in how they perform on the field. So, and we're not talking about high school or even college kids here. I realize that. But you are talking about human beings that like or dislike one another. So, it's not that they dislike Dennis Allen. How much do they want to play for him and show that he should be their coach going forward? How much does Dennis Allen feel that he deserves to be the head coach going forward? And is he going to coach like his own job is on the line? Those are the kind of things that we're going to find out about today.
You want a prime example of a team playing for someone and showing that they want someone to be their head coach moving forward. Look no further than a team within the NFC South and look at the Carolina Panthers and how they're playing for Wilkes. I mean, this is a guy that I don't think anybody had on a short list of, oh, he could be the next head coach of the Carolina Panthers. The way he has that team playing and the way that team is playing for him, especially if they play well these last 2 weeks. Remember, they control their own destiny. If they win their final 2 games, they win the NFC South. If somehow that happens, you can't not bring them back. And that's what I guess we'll see with New Orleans is how much do you want to play for Dennis Allen? Not just these last 2 weeks, but moving forward as well. You're right, Bob. There's a lot we could find out with that. Well, as we wrap up the pregame show, we will see you guys for halftime as well. Bob, what are your final predictions for today's matchup?
First of all, folks, there are three games to watch today. Obviously, the Saints. If the Saints lose to the Philadelphia Eagles, there is no more. They can still win they can still do this. They could say, no, your season is over if you lose today. The two other games to watch, Brendan already said the Carolina Panthers at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the other one is the Washington Commanders playing against the Cleveland Browns. That's also a 1 o'clock time slot. There are other things that need to happen if New Orleans wins themselves. There are other things that need to happen for the Saints to have an easier road to the playoffs. But those two other games are going to be the key today. However, on the field, I think the New Orleans Saints have the talent to beat the Philadelphia Eagles. I like as I said a few minutes ago, I like the matchup much better with Jalen Hurts on the sideline. By the way, the Saints defense has just played terrific football over the last really 8 weeks, but especially 4 or 5 weeks. They've held their last 4 opponents under 20 points. Only one team has scored over 20 points against the Saints in the last 8 weeks. But you look at the Saints' record over that time. You throw out a statistic like that, and you're thinking, oh, my God, they won 4 in a row. They won 6 of 8, things like that. They still have a losing record. So what's that tell you about the offense? Not good things. And the Eagles have a very strong defense themselves. Teams that have had success against Philadelphia has been able to run the ball. So look for New Orleans to kind of probe the Eagles that way first, especially to kind of keep that pass rush off of quarterback Andy Dalton and give them a fighting chance that way. But the Saints are going to have to put points on the board today. I do think that they'll move the football a little bit better than some people think. But it's hard to believe that the Saints are going to all of a sudden have an offensive explosion today when we've really only seen it one other time all year long. And that was against a defense that was far worse than the one that they're going to be facing on the road in Philadelphia. I think the Saints are going to make a game of it. And the key is to stay in the game early. They have not done that the last 2 times they have played Philadelphia. If they can, then this will be a battle in the fourth quarter. I just don't think that they have the firepower to match the Eagles point for point. And although I would expect some plays from the Saints defense today, to expect them to hold an explosive Eagles offense under 20 points is just too much. I think the Eagles pull this one out 27-21.
I'm with you, Bob. This is a Saints offense that is drastically 180 degrees different than the one that we saw even just 2 years ago. This is a Saints offense that has not really found a rhythm. You start to see a little bit with Alvin Kamara getting more than 20 touches in back-to-back weeks. But you know that the Eagles are going to hone in on that.
Mm-hmm.
You know that even the little bit of Taysom Hill that we see, the Eagles are going to hone in on that. I just mentioned a little bit ago how good they've been against running backs this year and how good that defensive line is. You alluded to it, maybe the deepest defensive line in football. Even with Gardner Minshew at quarterback, there's so many weapons. I mean, Bob, you did an excellent job naming all of them. They have weapons everywhere. And like you said, to ask the Saints to hold that team under 20 points just to have a chance, that's a big ask. Like I said, new year, new Saints. I don't know. We'll see about the offense. I just don't see that being the case. I see Philadelphia winning this game, not easily, but definitely pulling away in the fourth quarter. I'm going to take the Eagles 28-17. They pull away in the fourth quarter. It's close for a while, but the Saints do everything they can defensively to hold the NFC's top team to 20-something points until the end. So, yeah, neither of us have the Saints advancing to the playoffs. If obviously if they lose today, we might have a different taste in our mouths at halftime.
Sure.
But the Saints offense has to prove something to us that they have yet to really prove so far this season. On a more merry note, Bob, where can everybody follow you on the World Wide Web? And where can people follow the podcast as we have a giveaway coming up next Wednesday?
Folks, again, both Brendan and I hope you had a terrific new year. I hope that 2023 brings you nothing but great blessings and great fortitude. Thank you for tuning in with us for this morning's pregame show. Make sure you join us at halftime. In the meantime, you can follow me on Facebook, Bob Rose, ROSE. I'm over on Twitter at BobbyR2613. All of our works can be followed through the Saints News Network, Saints News Network on Facebook, at Saints News on Twitter. If you're following us, you probably already realized that we have a Bayou Blitz Facebook page. If not, well, we have a Bayou Blitz Facebook page. And we're going to get a lot more creative with it in 2023. We are going to have some little contests, try to make it a lot more fan interactive. So, promote this thing, promote your show. Remember our Bayou Blitz, every Wednesday night, including through the off season. And with that, I'm going to let Brendan talk about the giveaway and our Bayou Blitz Twitter contest.
Yeah, how about that? So first off, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at BT Boylan. In terms of our giveaway, if you follow us over at Bayou Blitz Pod on Twitter, and obviously on the Facebook group as well, we'll be able to post it both places, but only one giveaway for social media. We'll have another giveaway. Like I said, we're giving away 2 Funko Pops, one for social media and one for you guys on YouTube that do not have social media. So if you just follow those, we'll have all the instructions on Wednesday for how to win. And then the following Wednesday, we will pick a winner for you guys here on YouTube. You're going to have to just tune in to the Bayou Blitz next Wednesday to figure out how you can win a Funko Pop of one of 3 Saints, whether it's Drew Brees, whether it's Mike Thomas, or whether it's Alvin Kamara. I haven't picked which ones I'm going to go get for you guys yet. So if you want to drop some hints, just tweet at me. Just tell me what you want. But nonetheless, again, Wednesday night, go follow us on Twitter at Bayou Blitz Pod or the Facebook group. We'll have the instructions there for the giveaway for social. And like I said, for YouTube folks, you got to tune in next Wednesday night to figure out how to win. So even if the Saints don't win today, you guys still win by tuning in next Wednesday. Well, that was it. That sounded like a car salesman ad. How about that?
But wait, there's more.
But
there's really not. I've just always wanted to say that.
Oh, well, there is more. You get to see our beautiful faces.
But there you go.
Oh, well, the people may disagree with us there. Beautiful. We'll save that opinion for the people that matter, right? Yeah. Lauren and Katie. Those are the only people that matter. Right. They might be the only people in the world that say that about us, but those are the only ones that matter.
Yeah, I can't picture you and I putting out a Bayou Blitz swimsuit calendar anytime soon.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. No matter how many times you ask, Bob, it's not going to happen. But guys, hopefully you enjoyed the pregame show. We'll be back for halftime. And again, if the Saints somehow pull this off, we go into the final week of the season talking about how the Saints could win the NFC South. Obviously, they need some other things to happen. We'll have an official fan cheering cheat sheet. We'll tweet it out so you guys know who you're rooting for today. And we'll go from there. Until then.
Basically, root for Carolina and root for Cleveland over Washington. Like I said, they still need some other help, too. Those are the 2 big ones today.
Yeah, the absolute big ones. Well, with Tampa, becomes really easy. If Tampa loses the last 2, New Orleans wins the last 2. So you just got to root against Tampa the last 2 weeks of the season. That's as easy as it gets.
Yeah.
I don't know an easier way. There's a really complicated way, but we'll keep it easy for our brains and your brains because you still want to see us at halftime. If we don't have brains, then I don't know about a halftime show, but we'll see you guys at halftime. Until then, find peace, spread love, practice positivity. Happy New Year. Who dat? And we'll see you guys at halftime.